It all started on what should have been a quiet, uneventful Monday morning. After a brutal 12-hour night shift at the hospital, I was practically running on fumes. The harsh fluorescent lights, the endless beeping of heart monitors, and the adrenaline-fueled chaos of the ER had drained every last ounce of energy from my body. All I wanted was to go home, collapse into bed, and sleep like the dead. I turned onto my street, already fantasizing about my cool pillow and the blissful silence in my bedroom. But as I approached my house, my foot froze over the brake pedal. There, sitting in my driveway like it belonged there, was a silver sedan I didn't recognize. I blinked, wondering if the exhaustion was playing tricks on me. But no, the car was real. Sitting dead center in my driveway. At first, I thought it was a simple mistake. Maybe a delivery driver who got confused, or a guest from one of the neighboring houses who parked without thinking. No big deal, right? I took a calming breath, pulled over to the curb, which was a rare parking luxury in this neighborhood, and got out. The morning sun was just starting to rise, casting long shadows across the asphalt. I approached the car, looking for some kind of clue, a parking permit, a note, anything. Nothing. Trying not to let my growing irritation take hold, I fished a notepad from my car, scrawled a polite message, and slid it under the windshield wiper. Hi there. Just a heads up, this is a private driveway. Please don't park here. Thanks. Feeling satisfied with my civil approach, I trudged inside, barely able to keep my eyes open. My wife was already gone for work, and my elderly father was still asleep upstairs. The house was quiet. Perfect. I collapsed onto the couch and passed out almost instantly. Little did I know that this was only the beginning of my driveway nightmare. The next morning, I woke up feeling somewhat refreshed, until I stepped outside to take the trash out. The car was still there. At first, I thought maybe the owner had just forgotten about it. Maybe they were out of town, or it belonged to a visitor who left it overnight by mistake. But as I approached, I spotted something that made my blood pressure spike. My polite little note was gone. No, not just gone. It had been crumpled up and shoved into the bushes beside the driveway. The sheer disrespect hit me, like a slap to the face. A simple mistake was one thing, but to deliberately throw away my note and leave the car parked there like they owned the place? That was something else entirely. Fine. They wanted to play hardball? Game on. I pulled out a fresh piece of paper and wrote a much firmer note. Private driveway. Do not park here. This is your final warning. This time, I made sure to tuck it securely under the windshield wiper. I even took a photo for good measure. I spent the rest of the day trying to shake off the frustration, but every time I thought about that car sitting in my driveway, I felt my teeth grinding. I was starting to get the feeling that this wasn't a mistake. This was intentional. When I returned home later that evening after running some errands, my stomach sank. The car was still there. The next morning, I decided enough was enough. It was time to confront the owner directly. I stood next to the car, arms crossed, trying to keep my temper in check. The front door to the house across the street opened, and out stepped her. You know that feeling you get when you just know someone's going to be trouble? That's exactly what hit me the moment I saw her. She had the haircut. You know the one, the short, angled bob that screamed, "I need to speak to your manager." She marched toward me with the kind of confidence that only comes from a lifetime of getting her way. "What are you doing next to my car?" she barked, eyes narrowed. "Your car." I replied, trying to keep my tone calm. "You've been parking in my driveway for days. I've already left 2 notes. She crossed her arms, a smirk creeping across her face. "Yeah, well, street parking sucks. It's not like you're using it all the time." My jaw tightened. "That's not the point. This is my driveway. You can't just park here because it's convenient." Karen rolled her eyes. "Relax. It's just a driveway." I took a deep breath, forcing myself not to snap. "It's my driveway," I said evenly. "My elderly father relies on this space for safe access. My wife needs it for parking. I need it for parking. You can't just take it because it's open." Karen let out a dramatic sigh. "Wow. So selfish," she muttered. I felt my hands curling into fists, but before I said something I'd regret, Karen spun on her heel and climbed into her car. With a screech of tires, she pulled out and disappeared down the street. I stood there, heart pounding, thinking maybe, just maybe, that was the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, I came home to find Karen's car back in my driveway, but this time, it was parked in such a way that my wife couldn't even get out of the garage. That was it. I was done playing nice. I stormed across the street and knocked hard on Karen's door. She opened it with a bored expression, as if I were inconveniencing her. "Oh, it's you," she said flatly. "Yes, it's me," I said through gritted teeth. "Your car is blocking my garage." "Move it." Karen sighed theatrically. "Look, I'm not going to argue with you every time I need to park somewhere." The driveway was empty. "What's the harm?" "The harm," I said, "is that it's my property." "Move. Your car." She rolled her eyes so hard I was surprised she didn't sprain something. "You're ridiculous," she muttered, but she stomped out and moved her car. As she pulled away, she leaned out the window and shouted, "It's just a driveway." I wanted to yell back, "It's not just a driveway. It's my driveway." But I held my tongue. For now, a week passed without incident. I started to think that maybe Karen had finally gotten the message. I was wrong. That Saturday, I woke up to find not just Karen's car in my driveway, but a second car parked behind it. I stared at the scene, stunned. She had invited a friend over and blocked my entire driveway. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and took several pictures from every angle. Then I made the call. "Hi, yes, I need a tow truck." I stood in my front yard, arms crossed, as the tow truck pulled up a few minutes later. Watching Karen's car and her friend's car get hooked up and hauled away was one of the most satisfying moments of my life. I was sipping coffee on my porch when Karen stormed down the street, looking like she was ready to commit a felony. "Where's my CAR?" she screamed. "Oh, your car." I smiled. "It got towed. You had no right." "Actually," I said, "I have every right. Private property. Remember?" Karen's face turned so red, I thought she might burst a blood vessel. "I'm calling the police," she screamed. "Go ahead," I said calmly. "I'll wait." When the cops showed up, it was Karen who got the lecture. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt a sense of control. But Karen wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. I should have known Karen wouldn't back down that easily. After the police left, Karen stormed back to her house, slamming the door so hard that I could feel the vibration from across the street. I watched from my porch, nursing the last of my coffee, wondering how long it would take for her to come up with her next act of insanity. It didn't take long. 2 days later, I was coming home from the grocery store when I saw it. Her car parked in my driveway again, but this time she'd outdone herself. Her car wasn't just parked lazily across the driveway. It was angled in such a way that blocked both my garage and the entrance to the walkway. And just to put the cherry on top of the disrespect sundae, there was a second car parked directly behind hers. My jaw tightened, so hard I thought my teeth might crack. This was no accident, no misunderstanding. This was Karen deliberately flipping me off in the most passive-aggressive way possible. I pulled over the curb, sat there for a moment, and took several deep, calming breaths. Then I grabbed my phone. "Hi, yes, I need a tow truck at my address." The dispatcher on the other end of the line asked for the make and model of the cars. "Oh, don't worry," I said. "You'll know which ones. They're the ones parked illegally in the driveway." 10 minutes later, the tow truck rolled up. I stood at the edge of my driveway, arms crossed, watching with grim satisfaction as the driver hooked up Karen's car first. The mechanical whirring of the tow truck's winch was music to my ears. Karen's car was lifted off the ground just as the front door across the street burst open. "What the hell are you doing?" Karen's voice cut through the quiet morning air like nails on a chalkboard. She marched down the street, phone glued to her ear, looking completely unhinged. Her purse swung wildly with every step. "Hey, neighbor," I called out, barely suppressing a grin. "You can't tow my car," she screeched, shoving her phone into her pocket. "Actually, I can," I said. "It's my driveway. You've been warned more than once." Karen stomped toward the tow truck driver, but he barely glanced at her as he finished securing the car. You're going to pay for this, she shouted. You're harassing me by enforcing my property rights. I said, raising an eyebrow. I don't think so. Just then, the second tow truck arrived to take the other car, Karen's friend's car. Seriously? Karen screamed, arms flailing. Oh yeah, I said. I'm making sure this is handled properly. Karen stood there, jaw hanging open, as both cars were pulled down the street, her precious silver sedan disappearing around the corner. You're going to regret this, she screamed. I smiled. We'll see. The next morning, I was sitting on my porch, sipping my coffee, when I spotted her marching toward my house. Her face was bright red, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. You, she hissed, stopping at the edge of my driveway. I set my coffee down and smiled. Morning, Karen. You had no right to tow my car. I had every right, I replied. She jabbed a finger toward me. You are harassing me. I'm calling the police. I leaned back in my chair. Go for it. Karen's eyes narrowed. Her phone was already to her ear, and within 20 minutes, a police cruiser pulled up in front of my house. 2 officers stepped out. One of them looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Karen practically ran toward them, arms waving. Officers! Officers! That man, she jabbed her finger toward me, had my car towed for no reason. One of the officers turned toward me, already looking bored. Sir, is this true? I stood, calm as could be. Nope. I've got photos of her car parked in my driveway. I left multiple warnings. I even have the towing receipt, if you'd like to see it. Karen's mouth flapped open. But it's just a driveway. The officer held up a hand. Ma'am, a private driveway is considered private property. If you were parked there without permission, the homeowner was within his rights to have your car towed. Karen's face turned scarlet. I live here. This is harassment. The second officer raised an eyebrow. Do you have any proof that you had permission to park there? Karen opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing. That's what I thought, the officer said. This is a civil matter, not a criminal one. If you want your car back, you'll have to pay the towing fees. Karen's eyes burned with pure hatred as the officers got back into their cruiser and drove away. See you around, Karen, I said with a smile. She stormed off, muttering under her breath. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. A few days later, I found a letter taped to my front door. The handwriting was sharp and aggressive, the kind of handwriting that screamed, I demand to speak to the manager. Dear neighbor, you made things very difficult for me with your petty and selfish actions. I've spoken to other neighbors, and we all agree that you are creating unnecessary conflict by refusing to share your driveway. As a member of this community, I expect you to be more accommodating in the future. If you don't want to cooperate, I'll have no choice but to escalate this matter. Sincerely, Karen. I laughed out loud. The idea that Karen thought I owed her anything after she had been worn and towed was so ridiculous it was almost impressive. That evening, I decided to check in with a few of the neighbors to see if Karen had really rallied them against me. She's out of her mind, said my next-door neighbor, Sarah. She came over last week, going on and on about how unfair you were being. We all told her she was out of line. She's parked in my driveway before, too, another neighbor said. I told her to cut it out. Turns out, Karen's list of allies was exactly 0 people. But Karen wasn't done yet. That Saturday, I spotted her standing at the end of my driveway, holding a clipboard. I walked toward her. What are you doing? Karen turned, all fake sweetness. Oh, just collecting signatures for a neighborhood petition. A petition? Yes, she said, her smile tightening. We're trying to address some issues with inconsiderate homeowners. Inconsiderate homeowners, I repeated. Let me guess, me? Karen smiled. If the shoe fits. How's the petition going? Karen's smile twitched. Great. Mind if I see it? Absolutely not, she snapped, holding it behind her back. Kind of like my driveway. Her face flushed. I stepped closer. You're impossible, she hissed. Just wait. You'll see how many people are on my side. Spoiler alert. The total was 0. A few days later, I woke up to find 2 bright orange traffic cones and a plastic, reserved for community use, sign in my driveway. Karen had officially lost it. I removed the cones and sign, tossed them onto Karen's lawn, and called a non-emergency police line to report the incident. It was time to take this to the next level. I should have known Karen wouldn't take a petition failure, lying down. But even I wasn't prepared for what she did next. It was a sunny Saturday morning when I walked out the front door, ready to enjoy a peaceful weekend. That peace lasted about 5 seconds, until I saw the scene in my driveway. 2 bright orange traffic cones stood at the entrance like sentries. In between them, Karen had set up a cheap plastic sign with the words, "Reserved for community use," written in thick black marker. A piece of duct tape held it to a wooden stick that was shoved into the ground. I stood there for a moment, processing the absurdity of it all. Had I woken up in an alternate dimension where Karen owned the neighborhood? "Honey," my wife called from inside. "Everything okay?" "Oh yeah," I said. Karen's lost her damn mind. I walked over, picked up one of the cones, and tossed it onto Karen's lawn. The sign followed shortly after. I took out my phone, snapped a few pictures, and dialed a non-emergency police line. "Hi. Yeah, I'd like to report an issue with a neighbor trespassing on my property." 15 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up. "Morning." The officer said, "Stepping out. You the one who called?" I pointed at the cones and the sign, now resting in Karen's yard. "She set those up in my driveway. Claimed it's for community use." The officer's mouth twitched like he was trying not to laugh. "Seriously?" "Dead serious." At that moment, Karen came storming out of her house. "What's going on?" The officer turned toward her. "Did you put these cones and this sign in his driveway?" Karen's eyes darted between me and the officer. "Well, I mean, the driveway was empty. It's such a waste of space." The officer sighed. "Ma'am, you can't claim someone else's private property as community space." Karen's hands flew to her hips. "But it's not fair. He barely uses it." "Doesn't matter," the officer said. "It's his property. You don't have the right to put anything there." Karen's mouth twisted. "So you're just going to let him hoard the driveway?" The officer rubbed his temple. "Ma'am, unless you'd like to be charged with trespassing, I suggest you drop this." Karen's face flushed bright red. "You're all against me," she shrieked, stomping her foot like a toddler. "I'm not against you," the officer said, his tone growing sharper. "I'm enforcing the law, and the law says he's in the right." Karen's mouth opened and closed like a dying fish before she finally turned and stormed back into her house. "You want to press charges?" the officer asked me. "Nah," I said. "Let's see if she learned her lesson." Spoiler, she didn't. Community driveway stunt. I realized it was time to stop playing defense and go on the offensive. Step 1, security. I installed a motion-activated camera at the top of my garage. It had night vision cloud backup and a live feed directly to my phone. If Karen so much as breathed near my driveway, I'd know about it. Step 2, the sign. I ordered a large, reflective metal sign that read, "Private driveway, no parking. Violators will be towed at owner's expense. No handwritten notes. No room for interpretation. Just cold, hard facts." Step 3, preemptive action. I called the towing company and gave them a heads up after the last incident. They remembered Karen's car. They assured me they'd be ready to act if needed. It didn't take long for Karen to test my new system. One afternoon, my phone buzzed with an alert. I checked the security feed, and there it was, Karen's silver sedan, sliding into my driveway like it belonged there. I didn't even bother going outside. I called the tow company directly. "Yeah, she's back. Same car." 20 minutes later, the tow truck pulled up. The driver gave me a nod as he backed toward the car. Karen must have been watching, because the front door to her house flew open. "No!" she screamed, running down the driveway in her slippers. I sat on my porch, tea in hand, watching the show. "You can't tow it." The driver didn't even flinch. "Yes, I can." Karen's face contorted with rage. "This is illegal." "Nope," I said. taking a sip. It's my property. As the tow truck rolled away with her car, Karen screamed so loudly I'm surprised the neighborhood dogs didn't start howling. "You're going to regret this," she shouted. "Maybe," I said with a shrug, "but probably not." After the third towing incident, Karen's reputation in the neighborhood took a nosedive. Word spread fast. Sarah, my next-door neighbor, practically ran over the next morning to get the scoop. "She seriously got towed again?" Sarah laughed. "Oh, yeah," I said. She even tried to claim my driveway as community space. By the end of the week, Karen had become a local legend, but not in the way she wanted. Neighbors started calling my driveway the Karen Zone. The sight of the tow truck parked in front of my house became a running joke. Even the mailman got in on it. "I see the Karen Zone's been quiet lately," he'd say with a wink. Karen, meanwhile, avoided me like the plague. If she saw me working in the yard, she'd cross the street. If we made accidental eye contact, her eyes would dart away like I'd hit her with a laser pointer. The sense of peace that settled over the neighborhood was almost too good to be true. From that point on, Karen stopped parking in my driveway. My wife and I could finally come and go without worrying about being blocked in. My elderly father had easy access when he visited. I no longer had to mentally brace myself every time I came home. Karen kept a low profile after that. Her car was never seen in my driveway again. I catch glimpses of her now and then, watering her garden, walking her dog, but she never acknowledged me. Sometimes I'd wave, just to see if she'd respond. She never did. One evening, my wife and I were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset. "Do you think Karen's finally learned her lesson?" my wife asked. "Oh, she learned," I said. "But more importantly, I learned something." "What's that?" "That boundaries matter," I said. "And some people will test them, no matter how clear you make them." I took a sip of my tea. Karen thought she could get her way by pushing me, and for a while I let her. But not anymore. "Nope," I said with a grin. "And if another Karen ever tries to mess with my driveway..." "You got the tow truck on speed dial," my wife said, laughing. "Exactly." As the sun dipped below the horizon, I stretched my legs out and smiled. The driveway was empty, peaceful, exactly how it should be. Boundaries are important. If you don't stand up for them, people like Karen will walk all over you. Enforcing them might feel uncomfortable at first, but in the end, protecting your peace is always worth it. And if that means calling a tow truck, so be it.